Good evening, good evening, good evening. Welcome, welcome, welcome. You guys are now in the cocoon room. This is the Black Butterfly Podcast. I would like to introduce myself. My name is Amaru.
Hi, welcome guys to the Black Butterfly Podcast. I'm Candace, and we have a special guest this evening.
Hi, my name is Janea Young. I am your special guest. I am also the author of Janea's Journey. And we'll talk more about that later.
We just want to thank you for coming on to our show. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
And so this podcast, this particular episode is about domestic violence. And so we want to have this conversation because I think it's needed. We think it's needed. I keep saying but we think it's needed because we need to have some proper perspective on both sides of the coin per se in this. But as we do before we get started with each podcast, we're going to have our scripture of the day. Candace, take it away.
All right. So our scripture of today is from Psalms, and it's 5:30. Weeping may endure for the night, but joy comes in the morning. So I chose this Bible scripture because I thought it was very fitting because a lot of people face domestic violence in relationships. And so I know that some people are, they get sad, they get frustrated and different things like that, and they are hurt. But in the morning, I know joy comes. So that is why I chose the Bible scripture. So, Janea, go ahead and just talk to us a little bit about yourself.
I don't know where I can begin. So my name is Janea Young. I am a native of Gary, Indiana, born and raised. Luwalis graduate, 1992. Yay, L-Dub. This coming up Wednesday, the 17th, I will be celebrating my third wedding anniversary with my amazing husband, Monty Young, who is a barber here in Indianapolis. Between the two of us, we have 7 children. 5 are grown, 2 are still in school. I'm a wife, a mother, a daughter, an entrepreneur, and in 2015, I became a statistic of domestic violence.
Before we get into that conversation, I would like to say congratulations on your wedding anniversary.
Thank you.
Also, congratulations on being an entrepreneur because we celebrate Black excellence here. And so that is awesome. The little kids, obviously, you got your offsprings running around, right? Some a little bit older. So we celebrate all of that comes with being married. And so congratulations again, but go ahead.
Absolutely. I wasn't aware that it was 7 children between the both of you.
It's 7 children between the two of us. 2 of them are college graduates.
That's dope.
The youngest 2 is in the 5th grade, and then a sophomore. Who she's also an entrepreneur herself.
That's dope.
So yeah, and then we have a new grandbaby coming in September.
Well, congratulations to you.
Thank you.
Okay, so I just have a couple questions for you as we navigate through the show. When did you meet the person who you're in the relationship with that caused the domestic violence? What did it look like? And did you notice red flags early on?
So I met the person, I want to say in the early 2000s, maybe, when I moved to Nashville, Tennessee. I moved away from Gary because it was too much. So the first place I moved to was Nashville. So late 90s, early 2000s is when I met him. And I always tell everybody I had this fear of being alone because nobody wants to be alone, right? And so when I met him, I wasn't from Tennessee. I really didn't know much about him. But, he was charming. He was nice looking, yada, yada, yada. But because I had never been through domestic violence, I never knew what the signs were. Were the signs there to begin with? They were. I just never knew what they were because my parents didn't do that. That was never in our household. My parents have been married 43 years this year. So therefore, but I was always raised by both my mom and my dad that, a man should never put his hands on a woman. Now, granted, that didn't happen in the beginning, but what did happen were red flags, right? Like I had everything. Like he didn't have anything.
Okay.
I had everything.
Well, talk to
Um,
us a little bit about that. When you said you had everything, can you explain that?
so I lived myself and my roommates. We had a house. I had a house with my roommates. I had a job. I had a full paying job, full time, full paying job. I had my own vehicle. I was self sufficient.
Okay.
And then here he came along. We met at a club. I was at the club with my cousin. We met at the club, and here he came along, and he was still living at home with his parents, and he had 2 kids, and but I couldn't see past that because he was just so charming. And then he would spend the night at our house all the time, all the time, all the time, and then would take off with my truck.
Okay.
But it was like, it's okay. And so this went on for a few months. It went on for a few months. And then he decided that he wanted to be with his son's mother. And I really couldn't understand that because I had done so much and I was still young. I was in my 20s, and I was like, well, why? And I was hurt. And so I really didn't want anything else to do with him. But then he started picking and playing with my feelings and my emotions.
Okay.
And so that became something totally different. And then finally, we just cut all ties.
How long did you cut ties with them?
So I didn't hear from him again until I had moved back to Indiana, and me and my children moved back to Indiana in 2011,
Okay.
2010, 2011. And by the time I was well established, had my own place. Me and the kids are on the road to recovery from moving from Tennessee. And all of a sudden I get this Facebook message from his son. And for the lack of using the real name, we'll just say Lee. And it was Lee's son, and he was like, my daddy is looking for you, da 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 da. Can you call him? And so I called, and that's how we started back up talking.
Okay. So I heard you say that when you met him, he was really charming, and really nice and sweet. So that's what we call the representative. They don't initially, when you meet someone, they're not showing you who they truly are. They're going to give you the best version of themselves
Right.
in order to get you swept in and then locked in. It's not until weeks, for some it's weeks later, because they can't hold that what's inside of them, because whatever is in a person eventually will come out. Some of them can last a couple weeks, some of them will last a couple months, some of them will last a year until you're in the home with them. And so that's the representative, but eventually they can't put on that facade any longer, and then they come out. Okay, so what did it look like when he moved, when you spoke with him and then he came to Indiana?
So what did that look like? It
Yeah.
was, we talked on the phone all the time. He was still putting on that same charming persona. And then he came to visit me. I came to visit him. And then he moved up here. But when he moved up here, and again, you have this fear of not wanting to be alone. And I didn't want to be alone because by this time I'm in my late 30s.
When you
You
say here, you mean Indianapolis?
Indianapolis, right?
Okay.
Um, and I didn't want to be alone. And it was like I'm just saying all the right things. But really and truly, I should have left you in Tennessee because again, you didn't have a car, you didn't have a place, and you left your children in Tennessee with your elderly parents.
Wow.
Right. Um, but needless to say, he moved up here in October of 2011. Um, and by November 2011, 6 weeks after he was here, was when the first incident happened, and it was all over a key.
Okay.
It was over a key. I had a really good friend. His daughter was living with me, and she was in the process of moving. So, I left her with the key. She had to move all of her things. I didn't care nothing about it. And he was like, well, I don't understand why I don't have a key. And I was like, well, she's moving her things. It's just a key. And I was in the shower. We were, before I could even say it's just the key, he had flew the whole entire shower door off. And I'm
Wow.
in the shower. And I was like, what are you doing? Get out of my face. You know, I'm like, I'm yelling to the top of my lungs, get out of my face, get out of my face. And then he put his hand over my mouth and he was like, you need to shut up because you're gonna have somebody thinking that I'm doing something to you. What? I mean, and no sooner than when he went into that rage, it was just like you flip a switch and he was calm.
I have a question.
Yes.
Um, so when we talk about these incidents, and I just want to be very careful. So my question is, and I know Candace, you this is what your expertise, right? Because you're the expert. So I like to ask this question. In a lot of these incidents, well, per se, with domestic violence and the altercations, would you say that the person, the abuser, would have some self-esteem issues? Would you especially with in your case, Miss Young, would you think that it was because he didn't have the proper stuff, financially, and living with his mom and stuff like that? Do you think that was some type of self-esteem issues that he was lashing out from, or do you think it was some type of mental health concern also?
So I'm gonna choose the latter.
Okay.
I'm gonna choose both.
Okay.
Self-esteem, uh, mental health, definitely. And the reason why I say that is because his parents adopted him.
Okay.
Hmm.
Makes sense.
So he never knew he doesn't know who his parents are. Um, the version that I know of his parents married almost 50 years, loving mother and father. Very. I met them before. Very nice, very all of that. Um,
Let me say
also,
this. So go ahead.
also too is because he wanted to be in control.
Okay. So what I'll say is, from a therapist standpoint, you're dealing with someone who has abandonment issues, even though
Yes.
he came from a loving family, his adopted family. So he has abandonment issues. That being put up for adoption was outside of his control. So whatever he can control, he wanted to control. And
Mm-hmm.
also, even if a child is adopted and they're raised in a nurturing home, their DNA at some point will take over. So he has 50% of his real mother and also 50% of his real father, which says a lot about epigenetics. Okay. The rest is environmental. Even though, again, the adoptive parents were very nurturing, we don't know what the DNA looked like. Okay.
Exactly. Right. Right. Um, so that was the first incident and it just escalated. Every incident from there escalated as it states in domestic violence. You know, it starts off small and it just continues to escalate and escalate and escalate until it's like boom. Um, one incident I can remember, I was pulled out of a locked car. My cell phone was thrown up against the wall because I couldn't and I wasn't able to call anybody. But thankfully, in the apartment complex that we lived in, the maintenance man just happened to be driving by and he saw what was going on and he called 911.
Mm.
Um, but it's still all about power and control. And this person is always going to tell you that they'll change, they'll change, they'll change. And they change for maybe 2 or 3 months, or sometimes even 2 to 3 weeks. And it's
Mhm.
back to the same thing. So I will fast forward to July 19th, 2015. Um, it was a typical Sunday, like any other Sunday. I got up, I took my son to work. I stopped at McDonald's, got some coffee, got him a sweet tea. We had been arguing the night before because he wanted me to wear a particular outfit. And I was like, no, I don't want to. I don't have to. I'm an adult. I can wear what I want to wear. He got mad about that. And prior to that, let me say this. What escalated it even more was that the year before that, his father passed in 2014.
Mhm.
Just totally unexpected. That escalated it because then came the drinking. He already smoked weed. Um, July 19th, 2015, like I said, was like any other day. Took my son to work, stopped at McDonald's, got a sweet tea, got a coffee, came home, and I was trying to make him talk to me when in theory I should have just let him leave. And I was trying to make him talk to me from the night before. I should have just let him leave, but I didn't. Um, we got into this huge heated argument. You know, I was called everything but a child of God. Well, the moments that ensued up to that, it was chaos. And so it was like a demon. He was, like that's all you could see was rage. And so he pushed me. Okay, well, I'm this Gary girl. No, we're not doing that. So I pushed you back. And he pushed me again. And I pushed him back. And the next time he pushed me, he busted my lip.
Wow.
So I went in the house and I got a monkey wrench. It was about this. I don't know if you can see my fingers. About this big. And I got it. Now, mind you, we had a truck, a SUV that was in my name. And I also had got him a car that was in my name. So it was my car. And after he did that, I went in the house, I got the monkey wrench. And before he could pull off, I took the monkey wrench and I threw it. And it busted the windshield. He sped back up into the driveway. And as I was going in the door, he snatched me by my head, tried to pull me through the mesh door, unlocked the door, and still had my hair. And I was fighting. And I was in the fight for my life. Was fighting for my life, literally. I was spit on 3 to 4 times. I had tea poured on me. He pushed me again. I pushed him. He pushed me again. I fell and my head bounced off a ceramic floor.
Wow.
Bounced off a ceramic floor. The look in his eyes told me what was going on. So I said, you have to take me to the emergency room. And mind you, my daughter and his son were in the back room. So he never saw what happened. I was like, you got to take me to the emergency room. When in theory, I should have just took myself. But I'll get to that. And so we got in the car and he was still talking and the monkey wrench was in the car. And I forgot what he said. And I said something back, and then he took the back of his hand and he backhanded me and busted my lip again. And so this time he was like, and I'm not taking you to the emergency room. And so he made a right turn and we were going down Post Road. And I had my keys and my phone in my hand. And a clear domestic, anybody that's the perpetrator, they take everything away from you so you can't call or do anything. He took my phone, he took my keys. Was like, just give me my phone and give me my keys. We made it back to the house, and I was like, he said, I hate you. And I said, I hate you too. He grabbed me by my hair again. He spun me around. I picked up my left leg to try to kick him off. He grabbed my leg and he pulled my leg all the way back into the bone in my hip popped. Then we went to the couch. And he set me on his lap, and again, it was like a switch. And I got up all the strength that I could and went to the mirror in the bathroom. I'm calling my daughter's name. I don't hear. It's like, okay. So I just gathered all my stuff together, not knowing where my daughter is. Wherever she was with his son. And I knew that she was okay because they protected her. And I was like, Lord, just keep a watch over my baby. I just got to get to the emergency room. And I got there and I was on the phone with my father, my biological father. I made it to the hospital. They took me all the way to a back room. 2 sheriff's deputies were back there. IMPD was on their way. They asked, and that was that. My uncle came. My sister had to call my uncle. I was 42 at the time. And I just had to ask myself what happened. I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe it.
So my question is, you said that he moved to Indianapolis when you were 30. Is that correct?
My late 30s. Yes.
Okay, um so approximately how many years were you going through the domestic violence?
Six.
6 years. Okay, so the cycle of domestic violence says that it's the tension building stage, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then it is the stage where you have tension building, right? Everything, people are arguing, it's boiling up. Then it's the fear and control, right? And
Yep.
then it's the honeymoon stage, right? With
Yep.
people who are sociopaths or who display narcissistic
Tendencies.
personality disorder.
Yes.
And then after that, so the build up, the violence, the honeymoon stage, and then the calming stage. The calming stage is when they say, I'll never do it again. I promise you, I'm going to get better. I'll never do it again. Until a week later or 2 days later, it happens again. And then you're back at the honeymoon stage. And the honeymoon stage is when they're super, super nice and they buy you flowers or they buy you gifts or they want to be physically intimate, even with your black eye, your busted lip, your broken arm, stitches in your head. They want to be physically intimate with you because,
Mm-hmm.
again, it's another form of control. And I do truly believe that change for a person who is abusive does not happen without intervention. So I heard you say 6 years. So in that situation, there was some codependency on his behalf, right? We know that he was codependent because he was estranged from his true family. And also, we know that sometimes men who are abusers, they hate women. And as crazy as that sound, because a lot of abusers have a lot of women, but they really hate women.
Mm-hmm.
They hate women because they feel like their grandmother may have abused them or their mother left them, or one of their mother's friends had sex with them when they were young, or someone, another adult woman. So essentially they have a hate for women because somebody in their life that was a woman didn't treat them right. Or the other side of it, their dad or whatever man was in the home or who they seen was abusing someone in the home. So they thought that behavior was acceptable. Now, the effects of domestic violence on kids is so broad. Talk to us about what you think happened with your kids and also his children when they experienced the violence inside of the home.
So with my kids, so because we didn't have any children together, but it was all equal, right? He talked bad to his kids. He talked bad to my kids. He made his kids feel like nothing. Just the verbal abuse. Just the verbal abuse. Um, I remember my son was trying to protect me and he was trying to put his hands on him. And I told him, I said, I will die protecting my children. And I meant every word of that. This is you didn't this is my son. He protected me. And it was always the backlash. Well, you need to tell him he needs to stay out of grown folks' business. No, you need to learn how to leave me alone. Um, and I can honestly say, I'm not gonna sit here and act like I'm a saint or like I never went back because I went back. That's how the power and control is so strong because you feel like you cannot be without that person. But when I went back with a plan
Okay.
on how to get out.
So that was my next question. What made you continuously go back? You were hit with him for 6 years. What led you to go back to him?
It was the guilt trips and if you move this way, me and my kids don't have anywhere to go. I really don't care, but I had a plan. Even with us moving into a different house, I had a plan. Um, because I knew I had to have a plan in order to safely get us out.
Were you ever in fear that he would kill you and your children?
I was in fear that he might have done something to me, but not my kids.
Okay.
And
Now,
before you go, I would like to say this for people who's watching, right? Because we want to be balanced, right? It happens to both sexes, right? It
Yes,
happens
it does.
and so we want to make sure that we put that out there. She just was willing to share her story and be brave enough to talk openly about it. So I just like to put that out there. But go ahead, continue.
Um, so let's fast forward to January 2016, December 2015, January 2016. I was in counseling. I was getting free counseling from the Legacy House here in Indianapolis. Um, and I was learning more and more about myself every day, every week that I went. I was learning more about myself. I can honestly say that when I had my first session with all three counselors, because it was one for me, one for my daughter, and one for my son, I went in and I was like, I'm not depressed. This didn't happen because I was depressed. And when it was all said and done, and when I left, I was boohooing like a baby. I was depressed because I had so much other stuff going on too. My parents were about to move to Las Vegas. I was taking on that. I had just had major surgery. I was taking on that, and I'm stuck with it. So I had to deal with all of it. But every week that I went, I was getting stronger and stronger. I was gaining all my power back. And finally, I started using my own voice because my voice was robbed from me. It was taken. And so I'm sorry. And so the end of January 2016, he had an accident. He got sideswiped by a bus with my daughter in the car. And I remember making it home. I had one of my coworkers bring me home because I had a headache times 10 when he called and told me. I remember making it home. I went in the bedroom and talked to my daughter. I asked her what happened, and at the time she was 9. She told me what happened in her own words. She said, "Mommy, he was going to get some weed. She knew what it was, and he was rushing, and the bus was right there, and so we went around the bus, and as we were going around the bus started moving."
Hmm.
So when he came in the house, the first words that came out of my mouth, I will never forget it, is, "I'm glad everything, you all are okay. You could have been killed. She could have been killed. The kids on the bus could have been hurt. Anything could have happened." Right. And then I went in. I was like, "What was you thinking? This is absolutely insane. What was you thinking? You was in that much of a rush that you couldn't wait." And when it was all said and done, don't you know he made that out to be my fault? And I remember literally looking at the ceiling and I said, "God, you punking me. Where's the cameras? MTV finna jump out at any second and say you being punked." And I said right then, "I'm done. I'm not taking this no more. Me and the kids are moving out. I'm taking kids' clothes and beds. I don't care what else you want." And I own 75% of everything that was in that house. That was my point. I knew I was done. I had already found us a place, but every time he asked me where were we moving to, I was like, "Oh, we moving in with my uncle." Because that's the one place you're not coming over there. We moving in with my uncle.
So let me just say this for people who are not aware. Thank you for sharing that. The most dangerous time when a woman is trying to leave a domestic violence situation is when her and her kids are trying to leave, when they're trying to move out. That all of it, the time is dangerous, but that is the most dangerous time, because at that point the person knows that they no longer have control of the situation. And so when you're trying to leave, that is the time where the person usually tries to kill the victim. So I'm very glad that you took your power back and you already had a plan to get out of that situation.
And
Now,
so,
go
I'm
ahead.
sorry, go ahead.
Did you ever press charges? Did you ever have pictures? Did he ever go to jail for being an abuser?
So to answer your questions, yes, yes, and yes.
Okay.
Um, the final incident was February 19th, 7 months to the day, 2016. 7 months to the day. Um, it was a normal day like anything else. The kids, we getting ready to get up to go to school and work in school, and I was sleeping in my daughter's bedroom. I had bought an air mattress. I was like, I'm just gonna bunk up in here until it's time for us to go. Um, he came knocking on the door. I knew what he wanted, and I was like, "Look, I gotta go to. We gotta go to work. We gotta go to school. Da 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 da." So I laid back down. Well, he came and knocked on the door again, and I made the mistake of when I got up, I went to the bedroom and I stood in the door frame. I wasn't in the room, I was in the door frame. And I was like, look, we got to get ready to go to work and school and all this other stuff. He physically picked me up and pulled me into the bedroom and he closed the door. And Candace, I remember he sat me on the bed. I sat in the chair. I pushed the chair back. He pulled the chair forward. I pushed the chair back. He pulled it forward. When I pushed it again, he flipped me and the chair. Flipped me in the chair, screaming to the top of my lungs. I was on my feet just like that because I knew I couldn't stay on that floor. I was on my feet that quick. He picked up the chair. He threw the chair. Chair disintegrated. He threw the remote control holder to the TV. It disintegrated. And he's screaming, and I was everything but a child of God. And I'm screaming to the top of my lungs. And I was like, we can't continue to do this. Somebody gonna get hurt. Somebody gonna get killed, and it's not gonna be me. And no sooner, remember I talked about that light switch.
Mm-hmm.
Here we go again. It was like that light switch, and he put his head on my shoulders, and he was crying like a baby. And I was like, what? I didn't have not one tear in my eye, not one tear.
So that is manipulation in a form of psychosis.
It is. And so my daughter came and knocked on the door, and he wanted her to call him daddy. And so she, that's what she was like. You said you would never do this again, and da 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 da. And he cussed her out and called her everything but a child of God. So I'm still trying to figure out how to get us out because I'm praying, Lord, please. I don't know how we're going to get out of this one, but we got to get out quick. I left my cell phone in the bedroom with her. So he, that manipulation and crying and this, that, and the other. And I'm sorry, I will never do this again. I don't know why you want to leave me. And that look like, dude, you tripping. Like, this is done. It's a wrap. I don't care what you talking about. I'm done. Finally the door, I was able to open the door. Like, I faked the asthma attack because I really do have asthma, but I faked the attack. And so my daughter was coming closer and I was like, are you okay? And she was like, Well, then all of a sudden you hear a knock at the door. And it was IMPD, open up. And he looked at me like, well, did you call the police? Well, how am I call the police? I've been locked in the room with you for 15 minutes. Maybe somebody heard us screaming and they called. And normally in this house that we lived in, the screen door was hard to open. It opened with such ease. That was God.
Mm-hmm.
It opened with such ease. And because right before that, he turned and looked at my daughter and was like, did you call the police? And she was like, no. And I jumped right in between them just that quick. I wish you would. I went and opened the door and he was like, don't tell him I'm here. Don't. And the police officer started looking, I need him out of here now. Handcuffed and all. Okay. So and then they separated us. And so when they separated us, the police officer went to my daughter first and he said, give me a hug. He said, you're safe. Nobody's going to hurt you. Then he turned around and he looked at me and he said, you're going to tell me everything that happened because you didn't just have the conversation I had with your 9-year-old daughter. That's who saved us. All the while, he's sitting in the living room and he's screaming, Janea, don't let them take me.
So it's almost like this is just making me so sensitive. I'm so sorry. It's almost like he retreated back to a little boy, like a child in that very moment.
Yeah.
Who actually was the perpetrator, but he essentially became the victim. And so I just want to say my heart definitely goes out to you because oftentimes it's hard for people to share their story of abuse because it makes you so vulnerable in that very moment and it takes a lot of courage. But I do want to say this, your daughter with all of the argument that causes kids to have panic attacks, stress, and also anxiety. How was she functioning at school for 6 years, living in a home where she didn't know if her mother would live or die? And she was so young at that very moment. Can you talk to us about that? Also, how old is she now? And did DCS ever get involved?
So DCS never got involved because the kids never saw anything. That was one of my biggest fears. But because the kids never saw anything, DCS never got involved, right? I was told the first incident that um it was a possibility that I would get a phone call from them and they could possibly take my kids away. And I just broke. I broke, because I can't lose my kids. That's all I'm thinking, though I live for my kids. Um, at that time she did show signs. She was acting out a little bit in school, but her grades never slipped. Um, and as time went on and after we came out of that, my daughter was very clingy, right? Like she never wanted to be alone. She couldn't be in a room by herself. Um,
Separation anxiety is what it is.
Separation anxiety. I remember we were in the car one day and she just broke out crying and she just broke. She was like, "Mommy." I was like, "Baby, what's wrong? What's wrong?" And by this time we had been gone for months. And she was like, "Mommy, I'm scared he's gonna do that to us again." I said, "Baby, he will never hurt us again. Ever."
So she was having flashbacks.
Yeah.
Okay.
I have
So I,
I have a question.
okay.
Um, so you talked about being isolated from your family. So was family members aware that this was happening? And another follow up right after that one is where were where were the men in your life? Like do you have a brother or male cousins? Like did they know of some of the incidents that was happening to you?
So I really didn't say anything to anybody. Um, my parents were in the process of moving. Matter of fact, my parents found out what happened when my biological father called my mother, and they haven't spoken in 40 years.
Hmm.
My uncle knew what happened when he had to come up to the emergency room. He had to leave church, come to the emergency room, and sit there with me and hear me screaming as they are stitching me up. Um, that's when everybody knew.
So
Because
just
I
to
didn't
follow up, oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
because I didn't say anything because I was ashamed. Knowing that I never came from that type of environment, I was really ashamed. I remember my dad asking me, "I don't understand how you can go back to somebody who can spit on you." And that rocked me to my core. Because I really understood what he was saying. And I was like, I got it, but I understood what he was saying. And I had just started counseling. And it made even more sense as I started going through counseling. Right. Um, yeah. So a lot of people knew. Um,
Um, and I was going to say to follow up with your question, Amaru, that is called the battered woman syndrome.
syndrome.
Battered woman syndrome. It's a real term. It happens in real life. It's almost like Stockholm syndrome. You guys remember when they talked about slavery, how slaves became free, but they went back to the slave master and the slave owner? It's the same way. Battered woman syndrome. It'll become a cycle until the woman actually breaks the cycle. So for some women, they continue to go back to the abuser because the abuser has they have the finances, they have the home, they have the car, and different things like that. But in this case, Janea owned everything. It was more so psychological with her, the psychological and the control in that instance. And just really wanted to share with you guys. We had got some calls from some of our classmates that we went to high school with. They did not want to share their name, but just really telling us that they have also been victims of domestic violence. And where it gets really tough is that Gary is so close knit. Like, even though I didn't know you or I didn't grow up with you because you're older than me, when we met each other, you said you went to Wallace. I said, "Oh, hey, my cousins went to Wallace." You're like, "Oh, I know all of them." You know,
Right.
so Gary is very, we're like one big happy family, right? And
Yeah.
so when we look at relationships, because we know a friend of a friend and different things like that, we don't believe that people we went to school with since kindergarten or first grade or junior high or high school could be predators, because that's essentially what they are, male or female, and they are very violent. But we see them on social media, but they only show us who they want us to see. Okay. And so let's talk about addiction also when we talk about violence. Um, Substance abuse also adds to domestic violence. I also hear that a lot of people that we know and went to school with are doing not just marijuana, because you know that's becoming legal. People are drinking, that's legal, but a lot of people are doing cocaine now. I think it's like the new marijuana. Yeah. So that adds to that cycle of abuse, because drugs and alcohol is a chemical. So if you're already a narcissist or you have a personality disorder or you deal with mental health, it adds to the drama, you know. Um, and again, we don't want to look at people like, oh, we went to school with them, they can't be violent, but some of them are. And so, what women and men have to do, we have to quit um keeping secrets about people just because we know them. We have to say, hey, you know, a lot of times women in particular, I don't think men really do that, but they may, women in particular, they will say, well, you know, she's not with him anymore, he chose me, he want me, he left her for me. No, sweetheart, he didn't leave her for you. She got her voice back, she left him. He will make you think that he left her because of how he's moving, but no, she got her voice back. She hasn't said anything because she has class and she's still in her stage of dealing with her healing. But men who are narcissists and women, they don't change their behavior. They
No,
change
they don't.
victims. They
Yep.
just change their victim.
Yes,
Because
they
what
do.
happens is when you realize that you met the representative, right? And then the real person shows up and they're violent, you know, they have all these controlling behaviors. They manipulate, they stonewall you, they gaslight you, and we'll talk about what that means a little bit later. You really feel like, oh, you know, and his, you know, the guys will say, well, he traded up, he with someone else. No, he didn't trade up. You know, she left him because he's violent. Not only is he emotionally damaging her, he's physically abusing her, or and abusing her by removing finances and different things like that. So let's be clear, it happens on both ends with men and women. They don't change their behavior without intervention, they change their victims. And women will say, well, she's just jealous, or he's just jealous because I got who he or she was with. It's not that. They're really trying to warn you, but because you feel like you have a prize on your hands, you won't listen to anything else. But really, if we begin to talk to each other and communicate with each other instead of thinking someone is jealous of you, you will find out that the person endured so much in that relationship. You know, so now we have to begin to stop protecting these people who are violent. And I will not, because I didn't know the guy formally, but it was a situation. I know you guys had all heard of it, and I don't want to bring up emotions to the family, but I know it was a situation. I didn't know the young lady, and I also didn't know the male. I just heard of the situation. It's probably been about 2 years ago. I seen a picture of a real beautiful young lady, and she was dating a guy who was older. I think they had went to an event or something like that. Well, the moral of the story is he had victimized a lot of women throughout Gary, but none of the women spoke up because he drove a nice car. He drove a lot of nice cars. He had a nice home. He spent money on these girls. So none of the women said anything. So this beautiful young lady, he ended up murdering her and cutting her body up into pieces. Yes, Gary, Indiana. You understand what I'm saying? But again, women didn't say anything because, okay, they felt ashamed, they felt afraid, and he just went from one woman to the next. You know, flying them out, taking them on vacation, spending money on them, doing this the whole time. He was abusing them. Some women were smart enough to get away from him. This young lady tried to get away from him, but before she could, he murdered her. You understand? So we just have to be very mindful of that. And this is a really, really heavy topic. Some people are shying away from the podcast tonight, and they're specifically shying away because they're either the predator or they're the victim and they don't. Some people, when they're in their healing stage and space, they can't really verbalize and talk about domestic abuse. And some people who are the abuser, they don't want to hear it. Why? Because they have learned to operate in chaos and dysfunction, and they don't want to change. And in their mind, they really truly believe that they're not a violent person. So again,
Right,
I,
right.
I
Because
commend
that's
so much.
right. That's what he thought. Or that, when he went back to jail that second time, he was on the phone with his mom and he told his mom, I'm going back but I didn't hit her. I didn't hit her. It's like, wow. And
The manipulation.
was the manipulation and the criminal confinement. And, so we finally went to court. The judge told us, if I find out that, she said, if we find out that you have tried to contact her in any way, shape, form, or fashion, you're going back to jail. That was in September of 2016. November of 2016, he contacted me 4 times. That 4th time I called his mom and I said, he either has to be deaf, dumb, or stupid. The next time he calls me, I'm throwing him back in jail. That next time was January 2017. And I meant every word of what I said. Because the thing is this. For most of us, because I did it the first go around, even though charges were made, I didn't follow all the way through. That second time, I followed through. And I wanted you to see that I was the person who did this, right? I'm not scared of you. There's nothing you can do or say to me anymore. So that last time he called me and I threw him back in jail, his friend called me and was like, he don't do that to him and da-da. And I was like, what? And I said, you've got to be kidding me. I told the prosecutor, I said, no, I had been trying to get in contact with his probation officer. Probation officer, it took me a couple of days, so I called the prosecutor's office. Now, what transpired with them, it kind of ticked me off, but I stood my ground. So by this time, I had a new prosecutor. So when I called the prosecutor's office and I was like, hey, I have a case. I already had a case that was closed, but this person violated the no contact order. Who do I need to talk to? Well, ma'am, there's nothing we can do here. No, you're not hearing what I'm saying to you. I had a case. He violated the no contact order in that case. Who do I need to speak with now? He sent me over to the Victims Assistance Advocate.
Mm-hmm.
I left her a message. She called me back and told me what to do. I did exactly what she told me to do. So because in the township that we lived in, since it wasn't technically, it was Marion County, but we have our own police department, I had to call that police department. I had his phone number pulled up because I listed it as do not answer again this time. Because I was like, who is this calling me? I told the police, and I had our valid no contact order pulled up off the public case file. He called to check it. He said it's valid. He said we'll pick him up for the violation of privacy and trespassing or something like that. But I know violation of privacy.
Okay.
They picked him up 2 days later. His friend called me 2 days later and was like, I can't believe you locked him up. And I said, and I'm going to tell you right now, I'm not going to be looking over the back of my shoulder, trying to figure out if he's watching us or staring at us or what we doing and this, that, and the other. I'm not doing that with you. I'm not. 2 weeks later, I got a phone call from the prosecutor's office. And the prosecutor said we had to go to court because he contested calling me. I have a long distance phone number. Unless you got me programmed in your phone, you got to dial my number, period. And I remember them telling me this, and I remember calling my parents. And I was still at work. My desk was all the way in the back, so nobody could really know what was going on. And my dad was talking to me, and he was talking to me about this purse that my mother bought. I'll never forget it because he was like, she don't need another person. Anybody who knows my dad, he's real old school, right? And he asked me how was my day, and I broke down in tears like I was a 5-year-old little girl. And I told him what happened, and he said, "You know, Janea, I know you tired." He said, "I know you tired." He said, "But you got to see this through to the end." That was everything I needed. That next week we went to court. I had a new prosecutor, and the prosecutor told me, he said, if he contested this time, not only am I asking for these 3 years he was given, I'm asking for 6 more on top of it. I never had to say one word. And what worked in my favor was we had the exact same judge.
Wow. So here's the thing that people don't know about the state of Indiana. Especially Indianapolis is way different from Gary. So I tell people all the time, if you're from Gary and you move to Indianapolis and you lay hands on a woman or vice versa, in Indianapolis, you automatically get a 4 years. That is what it used to be. I don't know what it is now because we'll talk about the statistics later. But again, that's why I said women and men have to begin to stand up and become get out of their role of being a victim and advocate and fight for yourself. I do want to take a couple comments. We don't have a whole lot of them because I know this is a touchy subject, but my sister sent the prayer hands. Her name is Shalon Wilson, and can you pop up the first one from Joy? She says, Janae, I will be praying for you. Keep healing, because that's really tough. And then Joy put another one up. And my sister sent the praying hands again. Joy says, be careful fighting in front of children. It can lead to both parents being charged with a felony. That's heavy. And here's the thing. Remember, you talked about how you owned everything. He had nothing to lose. And I know that you are a professional, so you work in arenas where it could cost you something. You know what I mean? And so, yes, people who have nothing to lose, they'll try to destroy everything that you have. So thank you for that, Joy. And thank you, Shalon, again for the praying hands. And then we also have Mrs. Miller. She said, good conversation tonight. Thank you, Mrs. Miller.
That's Namia. I know Namia. Hey, Namia.
Oh, I don't know, but hi.
We spoke at an event
Okay.
a few years ago. Yeah.
Okay. So yes, that's a lot to unbaggage and unpack. But again, I am so grateful to you. Amara, you have any other questions for her before we dive into some of the statistics, some of the photos, and different things like that?
No, I just again want to say we are appreciative for you sharing your story because this is a touchy subject. People, you know, when you have man and you have woman, you're going to have that just what's like no one's ever had a perfect domestic relationship, right?
No.
Like you're everybody's different, everybody's human beings. You're going to have disagree about stuff, right? You're going to do things to tick the other person off, but it should never lead to any type of form of abuse, mentally, physically, or emotionally. And so these conversations are needed. That is why we take on and talk about these type of things, because when we were growing up, we didn't have platforms to talk about stuff like this. We didn't have podcasts in the 1980s or 90s, right? We didn't have a manual to say these are things we need to talk about. We didn't, we wasn't big in the mental health space back then. And so, it's refreshing, obviously being myself too, having daughters, having a wife, having sisters, cousins, aunties, grandmothers, so on and so forth. And so, it's just good to talk about these conversations because we want to make sure we're paying it forward to the next generation of our kids. So I'm all for it. So go ahead. I'm sorry.
So right. I see one of the questions, and one of the questions is this pronounced Janea?
Can you pop it up?
Janea.
Janea.
Right on with the Mike Jackson photo. Janea, I know. That's like
with us.
Yeah, that's real like.
Our question is, how do you heal? So everybody's healing process, right, is different. It depends on you. But the one thing that I will say, what I did is that in order for me to heal, I had to completely just be honest and real with myself. Look at myself in the mirror. It's okay. I'm not the first person and I'm not the last person. I had to be able to unpack all of this baggage because I was going from relationship to relationship and I was pulling bags with me. And I was never unpacking it and dealing with it. I just kept bringing it on and I was just just stacking onto it. And I had to be honest with myself. I had to be real with myself about what I had been through. Know that it was okay. I don't have to live in shame because I'm not the only person that this happened to. Get in counseling because you can't do this by yourself. And make sure that your relationship with God is mending. It was days, and you have to allow yourself to go through all of the emotions, right? Because it was days where I was happy, it was days where I was sad, it was days where I was angry, it was days where I was mad. I would tell my kids all the time, I would get up, I would get in the shower, and I would cry my eyes out. I would just bawl because I would be so angry about what happened. And I would come out the shower, I'd come out, put my clothes on. Okay, y'all, let's go. Like nothing, like nothing happened. But I had to do that.
What you just described is the stages of grief. It's just
Yes.
like losing a loved one. You go through
Yes.
5 stages of grief. So good, very good. And Joy said, yes, take accountability. You know, even though you're the victim in that moment in that relationship, we have to forgive ourselves for one. We also have to take accountability for allowing someone, because we all go through different things. It might not always be physical abuse, but it could be verbal and emotional abuse. We all go through things, right? But allowing someone to treat you so poorly and to treat you like you had no value, right? So at some point we do have to take accountability for sticking around someone for so long. All right. Therapy. You know that's my thing right there. So Janea, tell me how you feel that therapy helped you. What was your moment? What was your breakthrough? And what was your moment of awakening, learning that, you know what? I forgive him, not for him, but for me. Like, when did that happen for you?
So it happened for me, as I started going through therapy with my therapist, and she was excellent. Um, the things that I learned about myself, right? So I had abandonment issues myself because my biological father, he, him and my mother got divorced when I was 2, maybe. Even though my mom remarried, he left. He went somewhere else, right? And that's a whole different topic. But my breakthrough came when we were sitting there and I was talking to my counselor and she was like, Janea, I noticed that today you're not crying. And we were probably 6 months in the counseling. And she was like, I noticed today we just had a full conversation and you didn't shed not one tear. And I said, really? I didn't? She said, no, you didn't shed not one tear. And I can't remember exactly what we were talking about. And I was like, then everything that we're doing is working. I had gotten back into church and I had started going back to church with my uncle because the church that we had joined, I couldn't go back to that church anymore because the pastor who was there, I confided in him and he went back and told the abuser everything. Wow. You got to be careful who you talk to because you don't know who gonna go back and tell what. And this person, and the abuser came back and told me verbatim everything we talked about.
Which essentially, as a pastor, he should have known better. That was so dangerous. He could have very well injured you again or murdered you. So again, I tell my clients, I tell my, my people that I mentor, be careful, know your audience. Be careful who you share your information with. Someone is a listening ear so they can go back and tell everybody. And then other people is a listening ear so that they can support you and help you through your healing.
Right.
That's very damaging.
And you have to, yeah. I wish I would have. But you have to know who you're able to trust, right? Like, I knew it was certain people that I could trust. I knew I could trust my uncle. And then because all of this happened at a time where I was working at a company who thankfully never let me go, I kept a diary at work of everything that happened because everybody knew my MO for work. So if I didn't come to work, you knew something happened, right? So it was one person at work. It was 2 people at work that knew. I told my uncle. I kept in contact with my sister. And then my boss knew what was going on. Everybody else, it was like they knew, but I really didn't divulge a lot of information. Because you can't trust everybody. You had a sense that you can't trust everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Um, because you don't know who's for you and who's against you. You don't.
Absolutely.
You
Can
don't.
you pop up Joy's comment for us? All right.
Amaru, what has kept you from exercising violence and manipulation as a means to get your needs met? I just, for me, like, I'm just be transparent. Like, when you know better, you do better. I've seen situations where uh, men have I've seen it, right? I've seen it growing up. I've seen it with friends. I've seen it at school. I've seen it in different, uh, just different venues. I've actually seen it in the parking lot. I was just talking to Candace about this. It was a guy and a woman. I forget. I think they were at a store. I forget where it was, but uh, he was literally about to put his hand. That was at the bank. He's about to literally put his hands on her, and I intervened. Which that's no one rule. You never want to get into a domestic situation because you could be a victim as well. But being that I'm older, right? And I talked to Candace about this a couple of days ago. Like, there is no manual for guys, especially guys, on how to conduct yourselves with a woman. Like, we don't really have that conversation enough, because if you think about, a lot of us, we come from the inner city, so we're always taught to be survivors, or hunters, aggressors, right, protectors, right. And so I had a similar situation where it was about to escalate to that too, and I had someone sit me down. I was 22 when it happened. And so he sat me down and said, bro, like, what are you doing? Right. I asked myself, what am I doing? And he said, part of being a man is being able to walk away.
I'll say amen to that. If I could start, I would
Yes.
start, clap
And
at
so,
of
because
that.
he said, you got to think about it. Women, they're, not stereotyping, but this was he said from
Emotional.
verbatim. They're going to talk. You're not going to over talk a woman, especially when you're in the wrong, right? You're not going to over talk a woman, right? Even if you're right, you're not going to over talk a woman, right? He said, but part of being a mature man, the mindset is being able to just, like, you know what? I would, what are they at? What's the cliche? You let me win the war. I mean, lose the battles to win the war, right? So sometimes you got to take an L, be big enough to walk away. If I heard someone say, if I got to be big enough to walk away, then why do why I keep putting myself in this situation, right? You must be a little person because I'm too big. I happen to keep getting up to be the bigger person, walk away, right? But that's just me venting. But that was part of the process, right? And so being able to understand genetically, we were physically just domineering. I don't care what people try to tell on TV, men and women and equal and all that, just in a strength, like just thought process, you're naturally stronger than a woman, right? And so you're going, like, if you do something intentionally or unintentionally, you're going to harm her, right? If this is and he was just walking me through this stuff. I never had this conversation with that man before. He said, he said, the maturity, he said, what happened is that she will respect you more because she's like, what? He's willing to walk away for us not to get that volatile, right? And we can come back and revisit it, and so that's the process we need to have more talking to our young men about that. That's part of, and he said, if it's that bad that you guys can't even stay in the same room with each other,
You
why?
don't need to be together.
Exactly. Why are you together?
You
Right.
don't need to be together.
I believe women have this conversation more with one another versus the men. You know what I'm saying? Because I don't know if it's taboo. I just don't know. And so I have a bunch of nephews, cousins, and I am pressing them on having this conversation because it's needed. I needed it, right? I didn't have I had my stepfather, my mom, but I didn't have anybody who was an actual male parent to say, hey, and that's why male figures are very important, because when you have situations like this, like, that's crazy to be beating up on your woman. This is the woman, like, think about it. You're bearing child, right? You're bearing kids, right? You're the nurturer. Why would you beat up on her? You understand what I'm saying? That makes no sense. And so I didn't want to take over the conversation. That's why when we talked about having this conversation, I wanted to stand back But I know myself had to do a better job because now we got kids, right? I've been married 16 years. You're going to get into some arguments that you don't want to get into, but amplifying your voice, then that's traumatic for the kids. So, and then I have
Yeah.
daughters, right? And so that's enabling behavior. Just saying like my wife said, that's saying, hey, that's okay for a man to talk to her that way, right? And so it's rethinking a lot of the things that, we've been stereotyped to think, right? Oh, you got to have I'm the man. This is my house. So that's bull. That's bull bleed. That's baloney. You know what I'm saying? You can be a man of your household and still be able to run it without having to over talk and be domineering like that. She'll respect you more if you show peace, be a man of peace, and say, you know what? Let me run out here. Let me get my head together. We'll revisit this later, not in front of the kids, And so that was my thoughts on that. But very good question.
Thank you for sharing that. Let me just add to that. The whole thing we talked about that a while ago on some podcasts, the submission part of
Yes.
that. Some men, and maybe some women too, again. So let
Yes.
me put that out there.
Balance. Yes.
They believe that that whole thing about submission allows them to be violent, where
Yes.
there is physical violence or emotional or verbal violence, and that is not, again, that is not part of submission. We have a comment from Candy. Hey, Candy. Sometimes people abuse because of learned behavior um, on what they have seen within their own
Yes.
household. You have to remain in control if what is that? If you think
If you
counteract,
counter, yeah, if you counter that.
if you counter that. So I will agree to that. A lot of that could be learned behavior. We talked a little bit about that earlier. But if you know whether men, because I've seen some women get out of pocket as well. If you know that you struggle with anger, they have so many courses that you can go to. Now they have parenting courses that people give. They have anger management courses that people give. They have classes on de-escalation. Amara was going to talk to you guys about that. So there is no sense where we still have people who are living in a space where they are violent with each other, because kids don't do what you say, they in turn do what you do. So when you're violent in the home, the kids go to school, they're violent with their classmates, they're violent in the community, they're violent with teachers, they're violent with police officers, even though people don't want to hear that. It's the truth. So you're supposed to be.
But the thing is too, just to kind of piggyback off of that,
Mhm.
we can sit here all day and say that it's help for this and it's help for that, because it is, especially with COVID. But the first key to that is that you have to admit that you have a problem.
Oh yeah, oh absolutely.
If you don't admit that you have a problem, you're never gonna see yourself as having a problem.
And it goes back to that comment, accountability. Yes. Holding yourself accountable.
You
Agreed.
got to hold yourself accountable.
Absolutely. Did we have another comment? I think. Yeah, we
People
have
have
another.
to identify the problem. Right. Yep.
But remember, I said people have learned how to operate in chaos and in dysfunction. And because they have learned to operate in chaos and dysfunction, they don't want to get help, because that having that power and that control is what drives them. And here's another thing. We have a lot of people that, and I know personally, it's people we went to school with. We have a lot of people that hang around people who are yes men and women. So they will not change because the people who are around them are like them. So a lot of narcissists have been raised by a narcissist, or they hang out with a narcissist. And because they hang with these individuals, they keep telling them that what they're doing is okay and it's acceptable. So they don't think there's nothing wrong with them. So a person is never going to change something that they're comfortable with.
No,
Okay.
they
And
not.
so I know we're getting ready to run out of time, but can we just jump on to some of the questions that we have that for the audience and some
Before
of
we
our.
start, well, it was funny because Janea talked about healing, right? And so that
Mhm.
was the word of the day, right? So I'm just gonna run down real quick. Word of the day was healing. All right, the process of making and make the process of making or becoming sound or healthy again. The Swahili, because we love Swahili. I'll study Swahili. The pronunciation, well, not the enunciation of the Swahili version of healing is, let me make sure I'm saying it right, upanyahi, upanyahi, right? So that's healing.
Okay.
Let me. Did you want to say something,
Yeah,
Candace?
real quickly, I chose the definition. I chose healing as a definition because it goes inside of what we're talking about, right? We talked about weeping may come in the night, but joy comes in the morning, and also healing. This topic right here, Janea has to heal. She is healing, and she's going to continue to heal from domestic violence. I hope our other victims that are watching, that you are currently in a state of healing. If you have not sought therapy because you feel like it's not available to you, there are therapists out there that takes private pay, they take cash payments, they take Medicaid. There's also certain funding programs that will pay for you to go to therapy. Do not let fear hold you back from getting the proper help that you need. Also, Eugene, let's pop up the different types of domestic violence.
Sure. Give me some. So there are 5 common forms of domestic violence.
Mm-hmm.
Um, we can go through these briefly. Don't want to minimize, but just go through them briefly.
Okay.
Number 1 is physical, inflicting or attempting to inflict physical injury. Go ahead. You want to expound on that?
Okay, so yes, physical, inflicting or attempting to inflict physical violence. That could be pushing, hitting, shoving, spitting on people, which is the nastiest thing. You right now, if someone tells the police you spit on them, that's a felony charge right there.
Mhm.
Spitting on people, burning people with cigarettes, burning people with irons, busting people's eyes. All of that is considered physical harm.
And we have a comment from our YouTube community. Adam Mia Fitness and Gaming Nail. Hi, would you say most abusers are
We'll,
narcissists
we'll
or
get to that in just a
even
moment. We'll give you the
personality disorder?
definition.
I think we talked about that earlier, but we'll still expound on that in a little bit.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Um, Good comment from Adam. Number 2, sexual coercing or attempting to coerce any sexual contact without consent. Go ahead.
Okay, so have anybody ever watched the movie with Ike and Tina, the Ike and Tina story, when he was in that booth with her? And even though I know years ago that if you were married and your husband raped you, they considered that consensual because you were married. Now, if you're with a intimate partner, a husband, whoever it is, if you say no in a domestic violence situation and that person takes it upon themselves to still force you to have sex, it's rape. It doesn't matter if you're in the same house. It doesn't matter if it's your partner or not. So forcing someone to have sex with you without their consent. Okay.
Next one is physical.
Okay.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Psychological, installing or attempting to install fear. Here's are some examples: intimidation, threatening physical harm, or self harm. Okay, so that's psychological. Emotional, undermining or attempts to undermine victim self-worth. That is someone saying you could be a doctor, you could be a psychologist, you could be the president, you could be the vice president, you could fly planes, but that person will always tell you you're not making any money, you're not valuable, you're not good enough, no one will ever love you like I love you. Okay. And emotional undermining, attempting to undermine the victim's sense of worth. Again, not telling you they're not your cheerleader. They're not telling you you're the greatest. I've seen what you've done. I like the book that you wrote. They try to make you feel like you're so low that you can't do anything because they want to drive your self-esteem into the ground.
And then this was an interesting one right here, which I didn't know, but go ahead, talk about this one.
Okay, so this one I actually didn't know this until I got my master's degree. One of my college professors told me that economic making or attempting to make the victim financially dependent. Here are some examples: maintaining total control over finances and resources, not just the money that they make, but also your money. So if there's a woman who stays at home because her husband asked her to, and he is financially responsible for everything, him not letting her get money for her feminine products, or not letting her get money so she can buy things for the children, not letting her get money to maintain the house or maintain the cars. That is also a form of abuse. We know that abusers love to have control. So yes, those are five common parts of domestic violence.
And then we have our friend Marcus. What up, brother? People always want to manipulate situations, and once we recognize that, it makes it greater to get through things earlier. However, he or she who makes the money has the power. That has to be eliminated. He's the psychological. I'm sorry. He said that's what I'm
Mhm.
saying. Psychological.
Okay, thanks for the comment, Marcus. All right, and so the other ones, real quick, so we can get through those. Which one are
There's
you putting them now?
statistics here.
Okay, there you go. So 85% of women are victims of domestic violence.
We have more here. Oh, you got to talk about your definitions, and so
Yeah.
uh, here we go. Gaslighting.
All right, so this term has been around for a very long time, but we're hearing it more frequently because we are dealing with more narcissists, especially with social media. So here's what gaslighting is: it's psychological manipulation of a person, usually over an extended period of time. It causes in question the validity, the thoughts, perception, or reality of memories. So you talk to a person who gaslights, it's like telling a dead dog to grab a bone. That's
Mm.
exactly what it is like. You know that a dead dog can't go fetch a bone. But if you talk to someone who gaslights, and most of the time a gaslighting person is a narcissist, they're gonna run you in a circle. They're already dealing with some mental health issues. When you get done talking to them, you're gonna feel like you're dealing with mental health because they're gonna run you in a circle. They're never going to answer your question. They're never going
Never,
to do it. They're,
never.
they're going to manipulate. They might cry. They might shift the blame on you. They will literally having you feeling emotionally drained because they're never going to give you what you asked for. Okay.
Next one is Stonewaller.
All right. Stonewalling: to delay or block requests, process, or person by refusing to answer questions, by giving evasive replies. Guess who stonewalls people a lot? Narcissists.
Mm.
And guess who else does it a lot? Politicians. They'll run you in a circle. Okay.
And so that's, and I think Adam just left a comment. He wanted to address his questions here.
Okay, so
So
let's talk
let's,
about narcissists.
there it
Hi,
is right there.
Adam. All right, narcissistic personality disorder, guys. I'm going to read it to you because it's a lot. So, narcissistic personality disorder is one of several types of personality disorder. It's a mental health condition in which people have an inflated sense of self. That's an inflated ego, right? An inflated sense of self, of their own importance, a deep need for excessive attention and admiration, trouble in relationships, and a lack of empathy for others. If you know a narcissist, this is all of the characteristics,
Right.
okay?
Here's his question. His question is, would you say most abusers are narcissists? If you ask me, and in my opinion, yes. I believe most abusers are narcissists.
Yes.
I
That is
also believe that some of them may suffer from some type of personality disorder.
disorder. Absolutely. We didn't give the definition of domestic violence, so we'll do that now. So the definition of domestic violence is violent or aggressive behavior within a home, typically involving the violent abuse of a spouse or partner.
And then also, I would like to, because we talked about, oh, and that's, this woman changed her last name so many times. I don't know what she did. How did
Antisocial personality disorder. Go ahead, Jay.
that?
Yes, they don't want to be around a lot of people. And the reason they don't want to be around a lot of people is because they figure somebody is going to find out what they are capable of. So they will isolate. And when they isolate, they want to isolate you. They want you to change your friends and your family and solely be underneath them. Now they will go to different things, but it has to be small. They can't be around large crowds of people because they don't want anyone to figure out their true characteristics, so they'll hide that.
And we have some, and so this is one, like we have a lot of we watch a lot of movies, right? I'm just saying, as a culture, we watch movies a lot of times, and we see
Mhm.
a lot of movies who have uh these type of plots in the movie, right? Where the husband or the wife would be a domestic abuse victim, or the aggressor, right? The abuser. But I think, and I just saw a story where I should have used the information. It was a guy who had a family of, I think it was 6 or 7 kids or something like that, and he killed the mother, right?
Oh
Yeah, he killed the
yeah.
mother, and I was running back and forth from, I was running from on the highways, and I thought about using that, but it's just amazing. It doesn't seem, for some of us, like for myself, it doesn't seem real until you see real pictures, right? And I think for some people just register like that, and so when you sent these images, I was like, wow, right? And these again, these are
Real images that
our
I sent.
brothers, our sisters, our cousins, our aunties, right? And like, no, we can't do this. Like, that's just unacceptable, right? And we have, and I don't know the story behind these photos, right?
Well,
But
This one I'll
Go
talk
ahead.
about. This one here, look how beautiful she was. Her partner shot her in her head. Gun violence, domestic violence with a gun.
And most of this is because they don't want you, but they don't want anybody else to have you.
Yes, absolutely. So that's unfortunate for for her and also her family.
Right.
And again, these are our mothers, these are our sisters, these are our cousins, aunties, grandmothers, right? And so, as a male watching, seeing some of these images, it kind of, when I was uploading, I'm like, wow, like, and I'm gonna also be honest. I think it's not talked about enough. I'm just be honest. I don't think these type of issues is talked about enough. And you know, obviously when you're having these type of conversations, right, we don't really get to actually visualize what the effects of it looks like, and this is what it looks like. And not only is those scars physically, I'm pretty doggone sure emotionally they're a wreck
And
because
so
of what
oftentimes,
they dealt
oh,
with.
go ahead.
And I
With
said
pictures,
what they dealt with, but go ahead.
yeah, with pictures like this, if the victim has either been set on fire or they use acid to throw on them. So all of these women, this one is from Israel, and so we don't just have domestic violence in the United States, but we have it all through the world. These all of these women were killed due to domestic violence. This is their coffins and their funeral.
And so we don't want to trigger anybody with the images, but just wanted to make sure that people saw those images because it makes it real. Like this is a real issue, and
Right. And
we have to
so,
go ahead.
so Adam, to answer your question, you're welcome. Do abusers love their partners? No, because they don't love themselves.
Hmm.
They
And,
don't.
and love doesn't hurt. Love doesn't hurt. Have you ever
It
seen
doesn't hurt.
a
And
person that does not
it says that
struggle
in
with,
the Bible. Love
yeah,
does not hurt.
love doesn't hurt. Have you ever seen a person without mental health issues, okay, when a mother and a father has their child? You understand what I'm saying? If they don't struggle with mental health, they love, it's a different kind of love, but they love their child. Have you ever seen a healthy marriage where the man and the woman are very nurturing to each other, and you just look at them and you can see the love shining through, it really blossoms, right? Love does not hurt. Love is not blacking someone's eye. Love is not spitting on someone. Love is not kicking someone when they're down. Love is not telling that person that they're not valuable. Love is, is not tearing them down in front of someone else. Love is not arguing with them in public and trying to make them feel low. That is not love. If someone truly loves you, literally, they will cross a mountain to try to get to you, if to try to save you. That's what love is. People say they have love, but you can tell when someone really loves you because they're going to go through the fire with you. They're not going to push you in there and leave you.
Right. And I know we're almost at time, but I want to tell the story of somebody, um, and only because her abuser was from Gary. And I knew him very well because he was married to my best friend. His wife's name was Bronwyn Richards. She was from Las Vegas. I tell her story on my Facebook page, One Step Forward, the movement. Um, she lost her life at his hands to domestic violence. So he was classic narcissist, had women all over the place, but he was married to her. He
Yep.
was a cheater. He was a classic cheater because he did it to my best friend, my childhood friend. That we're still friends to this day. But how the story goes is that she decided that she wasn't gonna take anymore. She was ready to leave, and he said, well, the story said that she stayed with a friend the night before. The next morning when she went to go home, and how the houses are made in Vegas, you got the walkway, you got the screen door, and then you got like the little walkway, and then you get to the door. Well, he was hiding behind the bushes. She could barely get her key in the door. He jumped out and he beat her to death with a steel object. Both of her kids were at home. Her daughter jumped out the window. Her son called 911. He went to the police department willingly and told them what happened. And of course, they put him in jail. They locked him up. Well, years later, years went by, and they hadn't gone to trial yet. They finally went to trial. Well, his wife, Bronwyn, was also the caregiver for her mother. Her elderly mother never got a chance to see what happened or see justice because a year and a half later they said she died from a broken heart. Right. Well, their story is showcased on in Discovery Channel Investigative ID. His name is Bobby Richards. I don't have a problem with saying who it is. His name is Bobby Richards. So when they went to court, by this time her children are grown. And they put her daughter on the stand. And his attorney said, "How would you like for me to refer to Mr. Richards?" She said, "The defendant." And his attorney kind of laughed, and it was a female attorney. And I found this shocking. She kind of laughed and she said, "I can't refer to him as that."
Yes, you can. That's what he is.
That's what he is.
That's exactly what she said. She said, "Well, that's what he is to me because he took my mother's life. He will always be the defendant." So they went to trial in like 2015. Bronwyn was killed in like 2010, 2011. I remember my mother calling me after I told her everything because they sentenced him to life in prison. They brought him back to court due to the heinousness of his crime, and they gave him 20 more years on top of that.
So the one thing people will say, they won't believe until something actually happened, until you show them that you cannot continue to go around hurting people, you're assaulting people, right? People will continue that type of behavior until corrective action takes place. So Amaru, before we get off, can you go ahead and share your statistics that you the statistics that we looked up that we have?
Sure. So real quick, we have a fourth of women worldwide would experience domestic violence in their lifetime. Women between the ages of 20 to 24 are at the greatest risk of domestic violence. But it's like I said before, it's on both sides, right? And so a fourth of 1 out of 4 men would experience domestic violence in their lifetime. 1 out of 7 women have been injured from domestic violence. 1 in 25 men have been injured from domestic violence. More than 10 million women each year in America have experienced some form of domestic violence. This is the five things we shared earlier. Domestic violence. This includes rape, physical violence, and stalking by an intimate partner. Men are more likely to be an abuser. I think that was the last one. Yeah, that was the last one right there. And so we like to be balanced in when we're talking about these issues. And so and it just makes sense, right? Like I said before, with the guys, we don't have these conversations enough. How to conduct yourself with a woman, how to de-escalate yourself, right? And I'll talk about that real briefly. I think with we have more resources than we had before. We have to be able to understand de-escalation, right? We have to be able to have coping mechanisms to be able to say, "Hey, trigger, right? Let me leave because this is about to be something I don't want it to be," right? Especially when you have an audience around, which is the kids or family members around, right? Being able to understand, be aware of that. And I think too, and this goes to the, I would believe, submission thing, right? Because that's a whole big conversation now, when people talking about it, right? If a man can recognize that and just say, you have a disagreement with your spouse, whatever, or your significant other, if she can see that you're quick enough to recognize it's going to escalate and be able to remove yourself from the situation so that you guys can revisit it later, she will respect you more for that, because she would say, "I get it." You know what I'm saying? "I get it. I see where your thinking is at. You're thinking big picture," right? Because we've seen so many instances where you be having a conversation with your significant other, and it may not even be an argument, but some people around you will be interpreted that way, and someone goes to jail, and it's just a misunderstanding, right? And so for with you got cops and all that stuff. So that's just weeding all that out. And so that my message would be to the men would be have this conversation more with your sons, have this conversation more with your nephews, have this conversation more with your cousins or uncles or whoever you be in contact with, because this would you don't want to like abuse your women. You don't want your women walk around with black eyes and broken noses and stuff like that. That's not what women are for. You guys are you're the giver of life. You're the birth of families. You're beautiful, right? You can't smile. I'm not making light of it, but with your teeth broken up and your lip bar busted, and that's crazy. That's crazy stuff, right? You're born to be beautiful. You're born to to lead. You're born to nurture. You're born to do a lot of those things, but we cannot continue down this path of beating up on you. Malcolm X said it years ago, the most disrespected woman on the planet is the black woman. And so I'm always going to advocate. I was born from black women. I was raised by black women. I got black women here in my house. I got black women here on the platform. I got black women in my community. Then I got black all over the planet. You guys are awesome. You guys get a little crazy, right? We just gonna be honest, right? Y'all get to turn it up, and we like, okay. But again, that falls back on the men too, because you got to be able to understand logic when emotions is high, logic is low. Let me remove myself from the situation, because I'm telling you, I know from a fact she will respect you more if you understand de-escalation. We always like to get the last word, no, but you be like, you know what, and I it's funny. One of my de-escalation tactics, my wife, she laughs all the time. I do it with my kids all the time. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and she busts out laughing all the time. What
She knows that. She teaches that in therapy. We teach that.
But what she don't know, I do it with her too, because I'm like 1, 2, 3,
it really works. It does.
Or what is Steve Urkel? They did it 3, 2, 1, 1, 2, 3. What the heck is bothering me? Like, it's corny, it's cheesy. I know it is, but trust me, it saved me from. I'm like, oh my goodness, and you need to take a time out. So nobody has never taken a time out. Like, that's not irrational. Like, we need to be real about it. You're not. Nobody walks around with your partner agreeing all day. No, that's not rational, right?
No,
so
it's not.
We had this conversation. So that's what I want to say. Go ahead.
People have to learn that not all conflict is bad. You're going to have conflict. The thing is to agree to disagree and move past that. My parents taught me very early on, cool heads prevail, right? And that's something that we lack in our community. That's why a lot of our youth are going to prison, because they react before they process. But cool heads prevail. And so to Adam, when you talked about a narcissist, the difference between a narcissist and our co-host Omaru is that he literally just spoke life into this situation. He spoke life into black women. And so that is what a healthy relationship looks like. A person who is a narcissist, they can't give you that. They're not going to compliment you. They're not going to cheer you on. They're not going to say anything good about you. They're going to manipulate, and they show a lack of empathy. So that's the difference between what a narcissist looks like and what a healthy person mental state looks like. So again, we have some information about our Black Business of the Week. I just want to tell you guys, thank you for for being here, for supporting us. Janea, you are awesome for sharing your story. Again, it takes courage to get on here and talk about domestic violence. It takes courage for you to show your face and let people know that it happened to you, because it happens to people, to men and women. Some people just cannot stand up and talk about it. For one, we are letting social media direct us, and people show you who they want to see on social media. They might look like a happy family. Even I've heard women who are wives of pastors say, before I get on stage with my husband, he beat me up before we came to church. He blacked my eye and I had to put makeup on it. So people are only going to show you what they want you to see. And we are being fooled by social media because it's happening and people are just not in a position or in a space to get to talk about it. All right. Okay, we have a conflict resolution is our community biggest problem. Yes, you are right. You are definitely right. But again, like we say, when you know better, you begin to do better. Men need to talk to their sons as well as their daughters. There are a lot of men who are abusers, but they have daughters and they're not going to know how it feels until some man lay hands on their daughter. Or we are in a situation now where girls date girls, boys date boys, or vice versa, but they're still your children. You might have a situation where someone is, being violent with either of your kids, and you get that call. You're never going to know how it feels until your baby call you, whether it's male or female, and say, "Mommy, Daddy, someone's putting their hands on me." You know, your whole world will change when that happens to you.
So
Okay, so
if I can leave you all with one thing, this is something that I talk about in my book. Um, Stop giving away pieces of you to somebody who cannot bring peace to you.
Mm,
oh wow, I
mm,
love that.
mm.
I love it. So Janea, guys, it's no surprise she is our Black Business of the Week. Janea, author of book, Janea's Journey, Breaking the Chains of Domestic Violence. And look at her with her beautiful smile. That's her book cover, guys. You can reach out to her if you want to order the book. I believe she's also on a certain website, and I'll let her tell you which website you can get that book from.
And I didn't mean to cover her up. I'm sorry. I just hate that it happened. So go ahead.
All right, go ahead, Janelle. Let them know how they can get your book.
So you can order it through me. You can reach out to me on Facebook at One Step Forward the Movement. You can reach out to me on my personal page. The book is also on Amazon. It can be ordered on Amazon. It's $12.95 on Amazon. Um, yeah.
Okay.
You can also find me through Candace. Candace knows how to get in contact with me.
I
Yes.
sure do.
Knows how to get in contact with me.
Just FYI, guys, you know how I'm always trying to create some business or do some business. Janea has been like saving grace for some things that I was working on. I will say this just to share with you guys. When I was trying to start my business, my own private therapy agency, I reached out to a lot of people who look like me, and a lot of people who look like me didn't want to help me, because I think in our community we feel like there's not enough food at the table for all of us to eat. But I will say my prayer has always been that God send me my somebody to help me get to where I need to be. So a lot of things as far as like my billing or different projects that I'm working on for my agency, Janea stepped up and helped me. So I thank God for her. And so thank you again. She has been such
You're
a blessing to
welcome.
me. And I'm telling you, I look forward to doing great things with you as a partnership. So thank you for that. And I think I had one more thing that I needed to add. What else was it? I can't think of it right now. Omara, you have anything else that you need to add? I can't hear you. Turn your mic on. Your I can't. Your mic is not on. You're on mute. Take it off mute.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, there you go.
Uh,
That speaker keep going out.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay. No, you are on mute again. I said, do you have anything else you need to say?
No. I wanted to say, like, this was a great conversation. I'm always for, pushing our culture forward, having these type of conversations, because again, they're not that we don't have them. But to pivot a little bit, we want to still talk about our little event that's coming together in 2 weeks, right? I hate that it covers up together. I hate that, because it's like I hate that, right? So, but I want to share that real quickly. It's really coming together really fast. I went there today to look at some of the work we need to do. We just need volunteers at this point, because the baseball field looks excellent. It's cut. We're just gonna need some.
His mic keeps going out. So what he's saying is that our event that we're having August 27th is from 9 to 12 a.m. It's coming together really well. We have a lot of support from people in our community. We also have a lot of support from people that we went to high school. The donations have been absolutely amazing. We're probably going to need plastic bags, trimmers, gloves, and different things like that. We're going to get the backpacks. We're going to take care of the food and all of those things. I just want to say thank you again for everybody who has donated. I mean, Cash App has been blowing up. The Zelle has been blowing up. So we are definitely grateful. We're not doing this for us, but we're doing it for our community. We want to continue to grow as a people. And some conversations have to be had, whether it makes you feel sad or vulnerable. We have to continue to talk about them, because we perish from a lack of knowledge.
So real quick, I know my mic keep going out before it go out. Any shout outs you ladies may have?
I just again I want to shout out to my family because they're super amazing. Amaru, I always want to shout out to you. Janea, I want to give you a shout out for again coming on, being brave. I also want to shout out to the people who have donated. It's so many of you guys, so I have my ledger that Amaru laughs at. But I will do a shout out in our following podcast after the event because it's a lot of people. We'll be trying to send out thank you cards. So make sure if I don't have your address that you actually give it to us. And I do want to give a shout out to my sister Shalon. I was sitting in the office one day and she sent me money, and it wasn't for a donation. It was just kind of out of the blue. My little sister Crystal, she always does things like that. But if Shalon send you some money, you better believe. You better believe. I said, what made you send me that, Shalon? She said, you know what? She was sitting in her office, and she said God moved her to send me that money. And so I say this, I'll keep saying it. If God removes something from your life, He's going to replace it with something better. So a door that God opens for you, no man can close. My sister literally hit my cash out with money, and she said God spoke to her. So I tell people, when you vibrate, when you have high vibrations, people are always going to be attracted to you like magnets. And people who are toxic, they can't even sit in the same room with you. You understand that? And so I just really want to tell people that. But again, thank you, Shalon. Thank you, Crystal. Thank you to my parents who've always been a blessing. And I want to say thank you to everyone that God continues to send around me. And also my hairstylist. She is awesome, but she always is showing up and showing out. So thank you to Quisha. Joy, thank you also for being such a great friend. And I think that is all that I have.
Janea, do you have any shout outs?
So I just want to shout out to everybody who joined the conversation today. I really thank you all for joining because it is a conversation that needs to be had, and it's time to stop being afraid to have the conversation about domestic violence. For so long, it's been swept under the rug, and this time it's been beyond time to have this conversation. It's not one that needs to be behind closed doors anymore. It needs to be out in the open. I definitely want to send a shout out to my family, to my amazing husband, and to all my friends who's listening and who joined in.
I don't really have any shout outs because I don't want my mic to go out. So I'm gonna shout out to people who gave me this water. So people think I was drinking alcohol. No, it's actually water, right? So I'm just making sure y'all know that this ain't no vodka, nothing like that, right? So any closing remarks from you two ladies before we get out?
I'll always close with the same thing. Go out, people, be great, take care of yourself, take care of your family, love on everyone. If you are struggling with substance abuse addiction, mental health, anything like that, any anger, make sure you reach out and get help because it is never too late to change. I do believe in, second and third chances, but if you are holding on to any grief or any resentment and things like that, and you know that you need help, it's no one else's fault at this age because most of the people that we're talking to right now, you have to be in your 40s. If you are still going through some things and you're sitting in chaos or you're sitting in dysfunction, that's something that you have to be accountable for, and you have to recognize it and move forward. Again, happiness is a way to healing, and telling your story is a way to healing. For men and women, never be ashamed of being in a situation where you were abused by a perpetrator. It is not your fault. But when you realize that you need to get out is when you need to begin to take an accountability and kind of move forward.
Any closing remarks from you, Miss Young?
So one of my biggest closing remarks is, get out of your own way. You don't have to be ashamed, afraid of anything anymore. You are who you are, and it's okay. You are not the only person who's been through something like this. If you have been through something like this, you're not the only one, but there's all kinds of help out here. Please go and get it.
Absolutely. Okay. I don't have, like I said, I don't have no closing remarks. I don't want my mic to cut off, right? But I would like to remind others, our audience, our next podcast is in 2 weeks, obviously the day after the event. So we're going to be a little spent, right? Getting our hands dirty and all of that, right? But it's going to be that Sunday, August 28th. And that topic is going to be parental love. And I think that's going to be a great conversation because it's going to be a topic I can really embrace and put my arms around because, and I'm pretty sure a lot of us, right, who are children and who do have kids, just a different perspective on parental love and how it should be viewed today. So with that said, we love you guys for always supporting. Thank you for the donations and everything that you guys are doing. And until next time, peace.
Bye, guys. Love you.